This is music, and this is an album ranking video. Apologies to Nasty Boy Scott once again for my lame YouTube thumbnail. Anyways, in this video, I'm going to try my hand at another video genre you don't normally see on this channel, namely album ranking videos. And the reason why you don't see those videos in this channel is very simple. It would be too difficult for me. This is the rule more than the exception. Very often in a band's discography, I find myself having like clusters of albums I like equally much or dislike equally much even. And I quite often also have like more favorite albums by the same band. So if I were to go through them one by one and rank them in some kind of hierarchy, I would have to zero in on details that don't normally mean anything to me at all, pick them out and pretend that they make the difference in me liking album X more than album Y. Right? So it would be too artificial to me, if I'm being honest. And it's not the case that I don't like watching album ranking videos. I actually think they're very interesting to watch because it's interesting to hear people's thoughts on those albums, why they like this album, and how they would rank it, and why they dislike that album, and what they like and what they dislike about them, and their thoughts on the discography in general. And it's even more interesting to me when there's a discrepancy between their ranking and what I like and dislike. Like if my favorite album appears at the bottom, I think that's super interesting because it provides me with different takes, different perspectives, different opinions on those albums. It won't change my mind. If anything, it often makes me appreciate those albums more. But I just think it's interesting to know that those albums mean different things to different people and there are different takes on them. I find that fascinating. So I do like watching uh, album ranking videos, and there are lots of channels out there that do really interesting album ranking videos. Um, if there's one problem, perhaps it's not the videos themselves; it's the comment sections. Very often, you'll find comments by people who are angry that the album ranking doesn't line up with their favorite and least favorite albums. And very often you find comments like, I can't believe you would rank album X over album Y when album Y is clearly better than album X. And if you look at what those comments really mean, what they're really saying, it's this. I can't believe you would rank album X over album Y when I like album Y better than album X. So if you take those comments for what they really are, it's just a sad mindset of a self-centered, entitled little gnome of a baby. Person who can't um accept that the world doesn't evolve around them, and a person who can't accept that the world doesn't adjust to their tastes and opinions and views of the world. And whenever it does uh, not line up with what they think, whenever the world disagrees with them, they throw tantrums. And that's just sad. It's so just like little toddlers. And yeah, toddlers, babies, but I don't think it's necessarily young people only that write those comments. I think you find them across all ages, like even Gen Xers and boomers. This is just really pathetic, if I'm being honest. It's really sad because taste in music is subjective. And people will have different opinions, and I'm sorry, you just have to live with it, deal with it, you know, move on, basically. Well, what you know, there you go. That was an element from another type of video you don't normally see on this channel, the rant video. So there you go, a bit of a bonus. But yeah, so I decided I want to try just for the fun of it. I'm gonna make an album ranking video this once. And of course, I had to stick my hand into a hornet's nest because I decided to rank the Metallica studio albums. And it's a bit of a hornet's nest because Metallica fans can be very passionate. So this might end up a dumpster fire. I don't know. We'll see. It's probably going to be fun. Um, Now, Metallica, they are one of the absolutely most important bands to me and my personal musical journey and uh, the evolution of my taste in music. Um, so they've put out albums that I think are absolutely phenomenal, but they've also put out albums that I dislike. So it's kind of a very uneven discography in my perspective. So I figured they might probably be the one of the easiest bands to do a ranking video on, you know, ranking their studio albums. Even so, there are Metallica albums I like equally much. There are Metallica albums I dislike equally much. So I had to do some mental gymnastics to pick out details and come up with justifications for why this album appears above that album. And, so just take that with a grain of salt. And again, keep in mind, music is subjective. Uh, my ranking might not line up with the way you would rank things. And that's okay. That doesn't mean that I think your taste in music is bad or whatever. Just this is all subjective. Just keep that in mind. But anyways, let's get to work. Let's rank the studio albums by Metallica. Yeah, and I don't think anybody that knows me would find this surprising, but at the bottom we find Load and Reload. I dislike both albums. There's nothing on those albums that does anything for me. If anything, they trigger a bit of a negative reaction in me. I get kind of annoyed when I listen to them. I don't think there's any good song really on them, and I think it's again, you know, from the perspective of my taste in music, I think it's bad music. At best, mediocre. There's not a single song on Reload that I like. I dislike most of them, and the rest of them I don't like. Um, Pretty much the same story with Load, but there's one song on Load I do like, and that is King Nothing. So if you look at just the music itself, um, Reload to me is marginally worse than Load. But I'm actually going to place Load at the bottom because when it came out, this was before I had learned not to have any expectations whatsoever in new material coming out from bands. So back then, I had some expectations. I didn't expect it to sound like the thrash albums of the 80s, but I did expect it to at least sound like the Black Album. Um, so when it came out and it was alternative rock, that's basically what it is to me. I was super disappointed with this album. I even went to a pre-release party and I actually won a copy of Load at that party in a raffle. It was at a nightclub in Odense, the city where I grew up. So that was kind of, I guess, the cruel irony of fate. Um, but to me, the songs on Load, I was super disappointed. I expected heavy metal like the Black Album, and what I got was what seemed like a dishonest, half-assed attempt at writing the alternative rock wave of the 90s. That's what it seemed like to me. And I don't care really about the image of bands and artists, but they cut their hair, they started wearing eyeliner, mascara, makeup, and stuff, and it all just came across pretentious to me. So Load goes at the bottom because basically because of how disappointed I was when it came out, and to this day, it makes me a little bit more annoyed when on the rare occasion I listen to Load than when I listen to Reload, because at least with Reload, I kind of knew what to expect. Half-assed, in my opinion, dishonest, mediocre at best alternative rock, right? And I get it. I get it. Artists, you can't expect them to play the same stuff over and over and over again. I think that's fair. I think it's fair that artists want to change things up. They want to try new genres. They want to, maybe, incorporate new influences into their style. And I think that's fine. I don't feel betrayed or anything when artists change up their style. I didn't even feel betrayed with Metallica. I felt disappointed, but not betrayed. But at the same time, by the same token, uh, music fans are under no obligation to blindly like and buy and support stuff by their favorite artists if they've changed their music in a direction that you just don't like. I think it works both ways. And with Load, they changed their style in a direction that I didn't like. I didn't feel betrayed. I felt very disappointed, and I felt under no obligation to pretend that I like those albums. Although Metallica, as I said, hugely important band to me. Okay, so that's Load at 12th place and Reload at the 11th place. So why 12 albums? They only put out 11 studio albums. Well, that's because I include Lulu as a studio album. I know it's a collaboration album with Metallica and Lou Reed, and I actually place Lulu in the 10th spot, above Reload and Load. And yeah, Lulu is insane. The album is a mess. It's far out. It's crazy. You got the ramblings of a man, Lou Reed, seems to be going crazy. On top of Metallica playing, stuff. Some of it is okay. I think some of their songs, but um, it kind of seems a little bit pretentious. And you got the the weird "I am the table" stuff. Uh, it's an insane album, and I don't listen to it very often. I don't have it, and I don't intend to ever go out and find a copy of it. But at least on the very rare occasion that I've listened to Lulu, I've kind of enjoyed it for the insanity of it, how crazy, how far out it is. I've kind of liked it ironically. Um, Whereas Load and Reload, I kind of, like I said, I get kind of annoyed when I listen to them. Lulu, I get kind of a blast listening to it. I find it amusing. I don't think it's a good album. I don't like the music on it, but I enjoy it for being the crazy dumpster fire of a vortex of madness that it is. So that's why it's actually in 10th place. Now, these were the Metallica albums I don't like. The rest of these albums are albums that I think are decent or like, and of course love. So so the next one in the ninth spot, you got 72 Seasons, and I don't think it's a bad album. I think it's a pretty solid album with a lot of decent songs on it, and some pretty good songs on it too. It's uh, it's just very even to me. You know what I mean? It doesn't have peaks and valleys. It's a very even experience. So it's an album that if I listen to it from beginning to end, I do zone out every now and then. So it's an album that I kind of prefer listening to it a couple of songs at the time. And but there's some good riffs on it. I think the production is pretty good. You got some James Hetfield doing some things I don't think you've ever heard him do singing on a Metallica album before. He actually sounds great, I think, on the album. So I think it's a solid album. Uh, It's not a bad album. It's just very even to me, and the guitar solos. That I think maybe that's the downside to the album. I don't think Kirk Hammett is a bad guitarist. I know it's kind of trendy to say he's a bad guitarist. I don't think he's a bad guitarist. He has his style, and it has um, definitely become a trademark of the Metallica sound to me. And his guitar solos were part of, again, my formative years. So I don't think he's a bad guitarist. but I just don't think that the solos in this album are that great, and I miss the wah pedal, if I'm being honest. People criticize him for just overusing the wah pedal, but I think it's part of his style. I like it. I think it's weird when he doesn't. I mean, hey, if you don't want to use it, don't use it. I'm just talking about my taste again. So I think the guitar solos are maybe, I don't know what's going on with them. But yeah, in the ninth place, 72 Seasons. Not a bad album. Pretty decent. Pretty even, though. The next one is in the eighth place is Hardwired to Self-Destruct. I think Hardwired and 72 Seasons, I think they're kind of like equally good. But whereas 72 Seasons to me is like quite even, decent album with, like decent songs throughout. Hardwired is a bit more of a roller coaster. You have some really great, I think, fast thrashy songs on it that I really really like. They blew me away when I listened to it. You also have some slower, more groovy songs that I think are pretty good. But you also have a couple of songs that are like duds to me that are pretty boring. So, like I said, it's more like peaks and valleys, ups and downs. So sort of, I guess if you look at it like the average, it kind of, you know, kind of the just as good or just as decent as 72 Seasons, but because you got more like fantastic songs on there that are actually blew me away, you also have some songs that like I said, I don't think are good, but because you got those highs and you got a little bit more variation on it, and it's a little bit more interesting for me to listen to as an entire album. That's why it just appears just a little bit above 72 Seasons. But and I think 72 Seasons and Hardwire to Self-Destruct, they're both decent albums. I do like them both. I don't listen to them very often, but I like them. I don't have a copy of 72 Seasons yet. I will pick one up when the prices start going down or the second-hand copies start hitting the market. That's what I did with Hardwired. I bought a second-hand copy, and I'm happy I did. In seventh place, you got Saint Anger. So yeah, I actually put Saint Anger above Hardwired and 72 Seasons. It's a hated album. Um, People dislike it and people make fun of it. Sure, does the snare drum sound like a trash can? Yes, it does. Is the biggest crime that you don't have guitar solos? Yeah, I think it is. Um, does James Hetfield sing out of key in a lot of places? Yeah, he does. Um, is the production kind of weird? Yes, it is. Are the songs a little bit weird? Yeah, they are. Is it a little bit pretentious? Yeah, it is. Um, did Lars Ulrich's dad tell them to delete one of the songs because he thought it was shit? Yes, he did. But this album came out after Load and Reload, which again to me were like half-assed attempts at doing alternative rock, and they didn't play fast. There was no thrash on them. On this album, they play fast at least. You have some really fast songs, sure, played on a trash can drum kit for some reason, but I liked that. I remember I actually went to a record store in Odense where I lived at the time. I grew up in that city too, and you know, I played it on. They had like stereos where you could sample the music. I played it, and I was like, "Wait, it's fast. It's kind of thrashy. I like it. I'm gonna buy it." And because I think I had that positive experience in the beginning, that has stuck with me. Um, and I think there are some really good songs on there. Like I actually really like Invisible Kid. That's a very groovy song. Um, so you have, I think, some very good songs on there. You have some, yeah, a little bit pretentious stuff, and you have some duds too, and some pretty weird songs. And it isn't. I don't like it as much now as it did back then, but it's still an album that I enjoy listening to. So I'm probably an odd man out here, but I think Saint Anger is not bad. I think it's a decent album. I don't dislike it. Um, Hardwired and 72 Seasons. they're probably better albums, but I like Saint Anger a little bit more because of my history with the album and the band altogether. So that's the seventh album. In the sixth place, we find um, Death Magnetic, which I actually think is a great album. A lot of people say the production is lousy, but I actually really like the production. Uh, and on Death Magnetic, it's kind of like they take like elements from pretty much everything that came out before, even a little bit of load and reload stuff, but not too much for me. So it's kind of like they take the best of all those different styles they experimented with before, and they put together a pretty good, I think, not fantastic, but a pretty good. Uh, I would say it's a thrash metal album. You got My Apocalypse on it, which sounds almost like Slayer did at the time in the 2000s. I think that's a great song, and I really like the guitar tone, like the clean guitar tone, and I think Death Magnetic. I think it's a really good album. Actually, I really like it. Uh, so that's why it's in the sixth place. In the fifth place, you got Metallica, the self-titled, the Black Album. I've always had an ambivalent relationship with that album because I loved it when it came out because they played heavy metal and they played songs that as a a newbie guitarist you could learn and you could finally say, hey, I can play a Metallica song. That was hugely important to me, and I liked a lot of the songs at the time. I think they are like quality heavy metal songs. And I like that big sound that the guitar and the drums have. Um, but at the same time, I didn't like it when it came out because it wasn't a thrash album. It didn't sound like stuff that came out before. Again, I didn't feel betrayed, but I can't. Yeah, I do have like a love-hate relationship with that album. I'm on the fence. It's an ambivalent relationship. I like it, but at the same time, it disappointed me. I also I think that it's an album that hasn't aged that well. And we gotta be honest, when we say an album hasn't aged that well, what we really mean is I don't like it as much as I used to, right? And then for some reason we pretend that it's a fact, but it isn't. So there we go. I don't like it as much as I used to, but I still like it, and I still enjoy it when I put it on, and I still think there are some really good songs on the album, and it is no coincidence that Enter Sandman became the big hit it is. But you know what? I think I'm gonna make an executive decision, a last minute call. I think I'm gonna swap Death Magnetic and Metallica. So Metallica ends up in the sixth place, and Death Magnetic ends up in the fifth place because I actually like Death Magnetic a little bit more now. Um, Back when I think when Death Magnetic came out, I actually liked it more than the Black Album. So I think that's a more fair way to rank those two albums. So there you go. Uh, Metallica, the Black Album, in the sixth place, and Death Magnetic in the fifth place. There you go. In the fourth place, Kill 'Em All. Probably it. I think we can safely say, even if you are of the opinion, and if you are of that opinion, I think there's something to it. If you're of the opinion that there were some bands that came before Metallica that put some albums out before Metallica that were kind of like thrash albums, and there were even songs by straight up heavy metal bands even before that that were kind of thrashy and or speed metally. If you're of that opinion that there were other albums, thrash albums before Kill 'Em All, and I think there might be something to it. Or if you are of the opinion that there are better thrash metal albums than Kill 'Em All, I think Kill 'Em All is hands down the most important thrash metal album ever in the history of that genre. Is it a fantastic album? In a way, it is, and in a way, it isn't. I don't think it's as good as obviously as the top three, but I do think there's some really good songs on there, and you got Dave Mustaine's hand in a lot of the songs too, which makes this album interesting. Uh, you do have some great songs. It's kind of slow nowadays compared to a lot of thrash metal nowadays too. But I mean, Hit the Lights is a fantastic kind of speed metal song. Seek and Destroy, obviously, a classic. Maybe it's a little bit longer than it should be, but no, it's perfect the way it is. I love that song. The Four Horsemen, the Metallica version of the Mechanics by Dave Mustaine, uh, and they make it a little bit more complex and add some a longer bridge to it. I think that's a super interesting song. Motor Breath, their try at making a more punky song, and I think they succeed at it. I actually think, yeah, you got good songs. You got that, bass solo as well, which is absolutely unique. Yeah, I actually think it is a fantastic album. Maybe it's a little bit naive. They were young, and it has that like youthful energy to it, and a lot of imperfections. But yeah, actually, I think it is a fantastic album. It's a very important album to me, for sure. Um, because I think some of the first Metallica songs I tried to learn how to play, not successfully, were from that album. Um, I think I think I think Seek and Destroy was the song I learned to play from beginning to end, to the point that there was a local Metallica cover band, and their guitarist had to leave the band, and they asked me if I wanted to join, and I thought, yeah, obviously, I love Metallica. Hey, I'll join the band. And they weren't able to play Seek and Destroy all the way through because they couldn't really play the bridge. But I had learned more or less how to play the rhythm section in the bridge, so I could kind of play it, and they were stoked that finally they got to play the entire song. Later, that band, we started writing our own material, and it became kind of a groove thrash metal band, and we put out demo tapes, and eventually I had to leave the band because I decided to focus on my education. There was kind of the choice, do you want to commit fully to the band and give it a shot, or do you want to focus on your education? And I decided on the latter, um, which I'm kind of happy I did because I have a full-time job now that follows directly from me choosing to focus on my education. So I don't regret that, but that's a different story. Yeah, Kill 'Em All, fantastic album. An even more fantastic album in the third place is Ride the Lightning. Um, it has this dark, uh, kind of rushing guitar tone. You got some insanely fast songs on it. Fight Fire with Fire. Um, uh, Ride the Lightning itself is very fast and aggressive. And you have the slower song For Whom the Bell Tolls, with the, was it For Whom the Bells Toll? I can never remember, but with that iconic bass part. And you have the ballad that people freaked out over because they use acoustic guitars. How dare they? To the point that there's some people who say that this is not a thrash metal album, although it has super fast songs on it that are actually, in my opinion, thrashier than on Kill 'Em All. Um, Ride the Lightning to me is a great album. Uh, According to legend, Dave Mustaine still has a hand in some of it, which might be why it's you know a little bit better, perhaps. I don't know. I don't really have a dog in that Megadeth versus Metallica fight, if I'm being honest. If good music comes out of it, hey, it's a win-win to me. But Kill 'Em All, no, sorry, Ride the Lightning, excellent album, super important album to me. This is also where you started having some more complex songs on it that were a little bit more challenging to learn how to play, but kind of the perfect next step from the self-titled Black Album songs and the Kill 'Em All songs. I would say the Ride the Lightning songs. Perfect next step. Um, I think all the songs are fantastic on that album. I know the band dislikes some of them, but I don't care. I like all the songs. And in the second place, and to be honest, top one and top two, they're both my favorite Metallica albums. I like them equally much. So take this with a grain of salt. But in the second place, I've put Master of Puppets. Um, I think it is probably the best Metallica album, even in my opinion. It has the best songs on it, in my opinion. It has that again, the crushing guitar tone. I've heard they dubbed the rhythm guitar like 16 times, and with a player as precise as James Hetfield, it can only be like a punch to the face. And you got a fantastic songs, Battery, Disposable Heroes. Um, uh, you got Sanitarium. It's a bit of a slower song. Uh, Leper Messiah, which is kind of a unique and strange sounding song with that riff. Um, an all out banger, thrasher piece. I love all the songs on him. And of course, I gotta say, if we just backtrack a little bit from, the self titled album, Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, I think all the guitar solos on there are unique and they are trademark, and I love them, wah pedals and all. And that's why I had that kind of weird, like, what's going on with the guitar solos on 72 Seasons? It's because of my history with those, like, earlier albums, just to let you know. Uh, Master of Puppets, fantastic album, thrasher piece, and probably the best Metallica album. But I put And Justice for All above that album. Does it have a very weird, wonky production? Yes, it does. But that production has become iconic, right? It wouldn't be the same without that production. Of course, it's a shame you can barely hear the bass. And I think all the songs on there are fantastic. It's kind of progressive in this at this stage in their discography, like very long songs with a lot of different riffs in them. You got some odd time signatures. You got some really fast, like Blackened and Dyer's Eve. I forget. I think it's on that album. You got some really fast songs. You got some slower, more ominous songs like Eye of the Beholder. You have it's a thrash metal song, but really rocking song. Shortest Straw, which we actually also played in that Metallica cover band. Loved playing that song. Um, of course, you got the kind of ballad one with the machine gun drums in the bridge. Um, so it's a more of a progressive album, uh, more things going on, more complex songs, and really, I like And Justice for All and Master of Puppets equally more. But And Justice for All goes in the first place because this was the album that made me like thrash metal. This was the album that made it click to me, right? So as you can see, that's a very important album in my history, and it's because of this album that I started, going into all the other Metallica albums, and that the early, at least the four thrash metal albums, and also the Black album, that they are so hugely important to me. And it's also because of those albums that when they changed their style a little bit later on, I didn't like that change because my Metallica was thrash Metallica and a little bit heavy metal Metallica too. Um, Again, like I said, I'm all for artists changing things up, exploring other sounds, other styles, but I'm also all for fans not blindly having to like, you know, changes in style that actually don't appeal to them. You know what I mean? Uh, but there you go. This was my very bad attempt at doing a Metallica studio album ranking video. Uh, like I said, it's just my take on it, and I tried to to kind of I tried to be fair. This is a little bit artificial. Take it with a grain of salt, but I tried to kind of reason against the kind of the context of my own like history with music and my own history with Metallica and my own taste and stuff like that. If you have a problem with it, I think it's sad. Of course, we're all entitled to like different things differently. And it will be interesting to hear what people think about the Metallica albums and so on and so forth. But for now, please leave your torches and pitchforks at home. It's not necessary. I'm just a moron on the internet. Thanks for watching.